stuff nightmares are made of. Hey folks, today we're making a start on our door linings. Nothing is straightforward and nothing is regular in the cabin, so we're going to have to cut down the packs that I've bought. For a start, our internal walls here between these bedrooms are thinner. They're 63mm CLS and 9mm plasterboard. So I've gone around and measured up. These ones are going to be 85mm, so we'll just be ripping them down to fit. And then I'll show you how it's a little bit different on the internal walls in the middle of the cabin. Bradford's have dropped off all the door linings. I did consider making them out of 25mm MDF, and then I also thought about making them just from plain redwood. However, these packs are probably the most affordable way to go, and just nice and straight and forward, and they're already rebaited for the sides to kind of slot all together. So on the main centre line of the cabin, we've got a pair of stud walls. That's because the whole cabin is built on two separate halves. But again, I've had to measure these, and they're slightly different. So they're kind of a pair of 90mm, because on this centre wall we've got some OSB for racking, so they're a little bit thicker. Therefore, it's time to dig out the budget table saw. So these are 108 finished, so we need to take off 25mm or so. Well, the cutting went well, but this is the stuff nightmares are made of. The end of my tape is bent, so everything is going to be 3 or 4mm off. Well, that's worked well. So that is all 3 components. I'm probably not going to use the door stops because they're just very thin, and if we need to cover that centre line, we will not be able to use these ones. However, actually on the bedroom doors, they're conventional, so we can use them. I'll run a plane over the saw marks because it's not the best finish to paint, and then we're done. Maggie. How are you doing? Good. You go. Okay, some good progress today, as well as getting some plumbing and bathroom bits done. I started fitting these door linings. So we ripped them down to the right width, and these first two are in. What we're needing to do is obviously making sure they're plumbed, but also making sure they're nice and flush with our plasters, so our architrave will fit over and not have any nasty gaps. This is what I mentioned earlier. We've got two halves. These ones are just braced. You can see the join. You see this joint down here, which once everything's fixed in will be a few millimetres wide, and then what we'll do is put a wider doorstop there. So that is the bracing all out. These ones are all screwed top to bottom. We've put a pair of screws top, middle and bottom, and then a single in between. And there's a corresponding shim in here just to pack that out, get it nice and plumb, level, flush. Getting through the shimmies today. It's hard because I need to shim like this area out. Tighten that, but this is nice and square, nice and plumb for our door lining. Right, that is all flush. And a nice splinter there to top it off. So that gap is what we want all the way up, that's fine. So what we can do now is knock these off, I think. So no longer will the kids trip. So the next morning I continued with the rest of the install, getting the second halves of these pairs fitted, making sure that they're nice and flush, because the last thing I want is that doorstop rocking over the join. As well as making sure these are plumb, I'm trying to make sure that they're completely straight all the way up, because a screw in the wrong place can pull it in and you end up with a slight gap, and then when you fit the door, that gap around the door is uneven. So trying to make sure that everything over the whole 2 meters or so is nice and true and there's no deviation. Most of these boards were nice and dry and flat and straight, so there wasn't too many kind of twists to pull out, which was good. Another thing I did is I took a piece of scrap and cut it down to the height of the door plus the few millimeters top and bottom to represent the gaps. Right, I've just about finished this one. Obviously there's the other half to do. I'm going to move on to the main hallway now, which is just a straightforward door, 30-inch or whatever that is, 762 is it? And that one won't need to be cut at all. So I'm going to get that out of the pack, make it up and fit it. It's easy as that. The difference is that this is a standard 89mm stud, plasterboard either side, which equals about 110, and I think the packs are 108, something like that. So it should be that that fits nicely, whereas these ones are obviously slimmer and a pair. We did all the calculations yesterday and Dad cut down a bunch of the sides, so we know that they're the right length. I'm going to use that to template on to the other, just to make sure that we don't end up with too much of a gap underneath our door. If we had carpet it'd be different, but we want it fairly close to the LVT. Last cut, not sure about that.
I don't really.
You can't build a house without making a bit of noise, I'm afraid.
Sorry, please come in. You said it was the last one. What is that?
This is the doorway. It's gonna be a door. Well, out of all of them, that was by far the easiest. We didn't have to rip it down. It was perfect size, and it was nice and true and plumb. So minimal packers either side. Of course, you can get tapered wedges. And I think in America that's the normal way, when you slide them in from each side and you can adjust and then screw it in. I'm just using the normal plastic packers, which are kind of between 1 and 10 mil, and you just work your way up. What I have done is made them a little bit biased towards the hinge side. So the hinge side has very thin packers in there, so it's anchored nicely to the stud, providing the stud was plumb. And then the other side I've just adjusted to fit. That's providing I've got plenty of space for our architrave to cover. So pretty much all of our linings have ended up nice and flush with the plasterboard. In a couple of places the plasterboard is a little bit protruding, so I might just have to shave it down a little bit before I put the architrave on. But it's better that way than having the lining stick out too far and having a gap behind the architrave. So it's only really where my poor plastering, especially in these little fussy corners, is sticking out a bit too much. So I've got one more door at the end of the hallway. That is slightly narrower as well, as is this toilet. They are 27-inch or 6/86mm doors, so I just need to reduce those linings. I did one, which is this one here. That just means I've got to cut it down and cut a little groove on one side, which is easy enough to do. And then those ones can be fit. So I've got 1, 2, 3 to do. I might take them down to the workshop, because the mitre saw in the workshop, the big one, I can set the depth and just kind of plunge through that. And then the final thing to do in here will be to get the second half of this pair done, which again is a slightly narrower door, and then we'll have that gap down the middle, and that is what we'll cover with our strip. Now I think the strips, the door stops, which I'm going to put on the conventional, the single regular doorways, I'll just use what came in the packs, because they are, you know, made for the job. But here, where you can see I've got my pair, I'm going to need something a little bit wider. We'll fill all these holes, and then I'll probably come in, once the door's fitted, the door will be, whatever they are, 35mm, come to there, tiny gap, then our door stop. I may as well do even both sides. The other option is to bring just a single flat piece all the way to here, like you see in some old doors. But I think the easiest thing to do would just be to put a central door stop and make that probably just out of ceramic MDF, I guess, so it's nice and flat and thin. And then that will be done on these ones as well. But we'll have to make sure that that piece that gets put on is just pinned in, and I don't even mind, well, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but it can't be stuck on. It needs to be able to be pried off afterwards. So maybe I do just get it positioned where I want it, use an 18 gauge nailer, a load of pins, and we'll just fill those really carefully and paint it, and then we know that we can just pry that off afterwards. So rather than trying to seal it or paint it once it's fitted, I might paint them as individual pieces, fit them dry, and then you'll have a hairline join down there, but that's just the nature of having a cabin built in 2 halves. What do you think? Nearly done.
I did the knotting. That was my contribution.
You've done your knot. Oh yeah, Jay started getting around. We'll probably need 2 coats because they're a little bit resiny.
Oh.
So it's certainly not a how-to video. They rarely are here on this channel. It's just what we're up to, and this is exactly what we're up to. I'm sure there are better ways to fit. One thing you can do, and which is what I normally do, is make up the door frame. and then cut down the excess bit that sticks off the edge with a handsaw afterwards, but it just made sense for me to just cut them all down to width outside. I don't think there's any reason why that was a problem. Not sure what the going rate is for this gap of tolerance. I didn't want to be jamming them in there. I have no ability to plumb them up, so I think I added on about 20 mil, 25 mil on the opening, or even about 75 mil bigger than the whole door, something like that. I'm sure there was a Google search back in there when I was framing last summer. And then for some reason I got this slightly bigger gap at the top, which is fine. I can trim it, and then I will put in our architrave, which will cover that. I think the error there was I found out how tall these door lining packs were, and then I made up the lining, the stud-work to fit. I didn't realise that these door linings are about 20 mil, 25 mil taller than you need, so you can cut them down. So that's where I got that wrong. But either way, the perfect height now to leave us, I think, with about 3 mil top and bottom or thereabouts. Like I said earlier, we've got nothing to worry about as far as carpets or anything like that. So I'm hoping that these doors, while they might need a little bit of finesse, they shouldn't need the tops or bottoms cut down at all. So the nice thing is, now I've got the door linings in, everything else can happen. It's bizarre how one thing can hold up everything else. I couldn't put these skirting boards in until the architraves were in. I couldn't put the architraves in until the linings were in. So now, you know, second fix, we can just start chopping and sticking and fitting. And that's the bit I enjoy. So next week we should be able to get all of the second fix in. Joe can follow it behind and decorate those as I move on to the next room. And we should, therefore, be able to move in a bit of furniture and make these rooms a little bit more livable. There'll always be snagging and trim to do on the last day, but we're getting closer. If you've got any questions on this stage of the build, then let us know. We've also been working very hard behind the scenes and clocked up our running total of how much this has cost. So at some point in the next few weeks, we're going to be doing a big reveal, hopefully revealing the finished cabin, certainly internally, but also showing the costs to build the full 4-bedroom 100 square metre house. And it's surprisingly not too much more than what we were budgeting for. But that'll be for another day. Thank you for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.